And we're back on the issues. Tonight's special guest, Jason Palitsch, candidate for the 11th Worcester District, the state rep district, and the special election coming up on Tuesday, March 31st. Jason, thanks for being here. We wanted to talk a little bit about substance abuse.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And, making sure that folks who are suffering from substance abuse have the resources they need to get help is a top priority of mine. My day job right now, I do public affairs for a nonprofit agency called Veterans Inc. Based in Worcester, 501c3 nonprofit. We serve homeless veterans, veterans in need, and their families across New England. And there's a very high rate of substance abuse in the population that we've served, and I've seen what it is substance abuse can do to an individual. In the Northeast, we've seen an explosion in the rate of opiate abuse. Heroin obviously being the most common, but it's something that often starts with a legally prescribed prescription drug. It's also something that cuts across all socioeconomic backgrounds. As a school committee member in Shrewsbury, I'll tell you, every year when we hear the annual health and safety report for students, we hear of young people in our communities who begin to abuse an opiate that might be legally prescribed in the home, and it starts them down a path where they might begin with something that's $50 to $80 a pill, legally prescribed to another adult in the household, and they wind up with heroin, which of course in central Massachusetts these days is about $2 a bag. What we see as the challenge here in the Northeast is the lack of available treatment options. It's common to think of somebody struggling from substance abuse as just needing to admit that they need help, and then everything will be fine. That's the traditional after-school special, so to speak. But the reality is in the Northeast, it can be very, very hard to come by available treatment services. First and foremost, we do not have enough detox beds. Something the Commonwealth needs to do is expand the number of detox beds. I was very proud that Massachusetts became the third state in the nation earlier this session to require private health insurers to cover some inpatient detoxification. It's up to only 14 days, which is generally considered not enough. But again, we're only the third state in the whole country to require any treatment be covered at all. I also favor the efforts announced by our newly elected Attorney General Maura Healey, a good friend and a strong supporter of mine in this race, who's talked about the need to update the state's prescription monitoring program. The technology is out of date. We need to make sure that's current. So there is so much more here than somebody who's struggling with addiction just admitting that they need help. The reality is we do not have the services available here in Massachusetts to help address this crisis. If we fail to address this crisis, it's going to cost us in so many ways. It'll cost us in terms of healthcare expenditures when somebody winds up in the emergency room. It's going to cost us in terms of public safety. We've seen our local police departments having to administer Narcan now. By the way, over the last 6 months, the price of Narcan in the United States has gone up over 150%. And it's going to cost us in terms of public schools, not just when a young person falls into the spell of addiction, but also when their families are impacted. So it is very important to me that we address this crisis.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for appearing on the issues with me this evening, and good luck in your race. I hope that it all turns out for the best for you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good night. Good night, everybody.